Hey physics friends, Mr. Collier here. I wanted to show you some examples about calculating kinetic energy and just ways to think about kinetic energy. So a very type of kinetic energy question is going to be which has more kinetic energy and ask you to compare two objects. In today's warm-up, it was a 1 kilogram car at 2 meters per second versus a 2 kilogram car at 1 meter per second. So first let's do that, but then I'm also going to show you some ways to generalize it. So the equation for kinetic energy is that it is equal to 1/2 mass times velocity squared. So if you have all the values needed, it's as simple as plugging them into this equation, and I'll do one and then the other. So in the first one, we've got 1/2 times a 1 kilogram car times 2 meters per second, but we are squaring that value. So 2 squared is 4, 4 times a half is 2 kilogram meter per second squared, which is also known as a joule, by the way. So the other one that we can do then is the same equation, 1/2, but now we're taking a 2 kilogram car and we're making it move 1 meter per second, and we're squaring that. Well, 1 squared is 1. 2 times a half is 1. 1 times 1 is 1 joule. So you'll notice that even though these two numbers were like the reciprocal of each other, right, these two questions, the fact that the first car had more speed ended up making more difference. And that is actually a generalizable thing about kinetic energy. When everything else is equal, the velocity matters more than the mass because you square the velocity. So another common type of question you'll see is just what has more effect on kinetic energy, doubling the mass or doubling the velocity? And it's always going to be the velocity that has a greater impact on kinetic energy. So if you do the same thing to the mass that you do to the velocity, like say you doubled them both, you tripled them both, it's always going to be the velocity that has the greater effect. Along those same lines, you might see questions like how much more kinetic energy does something have if you double the speed? And so the way that you want to think about that is what happens if I take a number, change it, in that case double, and then square it, right? That'll allow you to think about it as well. All right, I think that's it for this one. Let me know if you have any questions.